If someone screamed right now, somewhere close to you, you wouldn't have to think about what to do. Your body would already be doing it. Heart rate spiking. Muscles tightening. Every hair on your arm standing up before your brain even finished the sentence. That was a scream. You didn't choose that reaction. You inherited it. And here's the strange part. Long before your ancestors ever picked up a spear, they picked up their voice, and used it as the first weapon. Across nearly every culture historians and anthropologists have studied, from the highlands of New Guinea to the plains of ancient Europe, warriors did the same strange thing right before violence started. They didn't charge in silently. They screamed. Loud, sustained, often rehearsed. Entire tribes built rituals around it. The haka of the Maori, the baritis of Germanic warriors described by the Roman historian Tacitus, or cries recorded in nearly every early written account of combat that survives. This wasn't decoration. It was strategy, and your body still carries the proof. So why scream? Why not just attack? The answer starts with a discovery that seems almost too simple to matter. In 2015, a research team led by cognitive neuroscientist Luke Arnal, working with David Poeppel at NYU, ran human screams through detailed acoustic analysis for the first time. What they found was a property they called roughness, extremely fast changes in loudness, dozens of times per second, something almost no other human sound produces. Not speech. Not singing. Not crying. Only screaming hits that specific acoustic signature. And when they played these rough sounds to people in a brain scanner, the response wasn't in the parts of the brain that process language. It went straight to the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, the same region that lights up during fear and threat detection. In other words, a scream doesn't get interpreted. It gets injected directly into the part of your brain built to react first and think second. Your ancestors didn't need to understand a scream. Their bodies were built to obey it. That's the first piece. But screaming before battle wasn't just about triggering fear in an enemy. It was also about changing how big you sounded. Psychologist David Reby at the University of Sussex has spent years studying something called vocal size exaggeration, the tendency across many species, humans included, to distort their voice to sound larger and more dangerous than they actually are. Deer roar lower than their body size should allow. Big cats do it. Reby's research on human voices found the same pattern. Under stress or in aggressive display, human voices shift, and the sound produced tends to make the speaker seem physically bigger to a listener, even when nothing about their actual size has changed. A war cry, in other words, wasn't just noise. It was a kind of vocal bluff, hardwired into the same biological toolkit lions and deer use to avoid a fight they might lose. Except sometimes, for your ancestors, it wasn't a bluff. It was a warning most enemies were smart enough to take seriously. There's a third layer here, and it's the one that affects you the most, right now, in your own body. Psychologist John Archer, who has spent decades studying human aggression, has pointed out that pre-combat rituals like war cries appear to serve a regulatory function on the person doing the screaming, not just the enemy hearing it. Screaming activates the sympathetic nervous system. It floods the body with adrenaline. It raises heart rate, sharpens focus, and suppresses the part of the brain responsible for hesitation and fear. Before a fight where hesitation could get you killed, a scream wasn't just communication outward. It was a switch flipped inward. Which means your ancestors weren't only trying to scare the person across from them. They were trying to become a version of themselves capable of surviving what came next. You felt a small, safe version of this yourself, and you probably didn't even notice it. Athletes do it before a heavy lift, that short, sharp exhale or shout right as the bar leaves the ground. Fighters do it in the ring. Even a stubbed toe pulls a short yell out of you before you've consciously decided to make a sound. That's not performance. That's the same ancient circuitry, still online, still firing, thousands of years after the last war cry echoed across a battlefield your ancestors actually stood on. Here's where it gets even stranger. Modern researchers studying non-alarm screams, the kind you hear on a roller coaster or during a horror movie, found that the human ear and brain can actually tell the difference between a scream of fear and a scream of excitement, almost instantly, based on subtle differences in that same roughness pattern Arnal and Poeppel identified. Your brain isn't just wired to detect screaming. It's wired to decode intent buried inside it, in milliseconds, without a single word being spoken. Which means somewhere in your nervous system right now, there's a piece of software older than language itself. A system built entirely around one sound, refined over hundreds of thousands of years to detect danger, project size, and trigger the body into a state ready for violence, all before a single conscious thought forms. You don't use it in battle anymore. Most of us never will. But it's still there, quietly running in the background every time you flinch at a sudden noise, every time the hair on your neck rises before you know why, every time your own voice gets louder and sharper the moment you feel cornered. Your ancestors didn't have armor most of the time. They didn't always have the better weapon. But they had a voice, and they learned, generation after generation, exactly how to weaponize it. So the next time you hear a scream, and your whole body reacts before your mind catches up, remember what that really is. It's not a modern nervous system malfunctioning. It's an ancient one working exactly the way it was built to. Long before your ancestors ever raised a weapon, they raised their voice first, and for a long, brutal stretch of human history, that was usually more than enough.